Thank you so much, everyone, for coming. Who needs some more wine? Yeah. So I do want to just take a moment to say this is probably going to rank as one of my favorite speaking events because we have wine, great food, a room full of women, and my husband and kids are not tapping on me right now. So I'm so happy. And thank you to Judy Lloyd, who literally is the most amazing project manager I have ever met. She put this together seamlessly, and I am so blessed to be here. So let me just start by saying we are not going to talk about stocks. We're not going to talk about bonds, which I know several of you are thankful for. And we are not going to talk about how I spend 6 months out of the year on the soccer field as a soccer mom. We are going to get down and dirty and talk about women's stuff. And I'm going to share with you a pretty dark place that I was in, that this hole I ended up in, and how I got out of that pretty dark place. But before I do that, I just want to quickly paint this picture of what my life looks like today. Because everybody kind of wants to know what's Michelle's life, you know. So I am married to this man named Jared Higgins. Great guy. We have a lot of fun together, which is probably the best part of our marriage. We laugh a lot. Blonde, blue eyes. The blue eyes gets him out of a lot of trouble. He is a real estate agent, and then he is a reserve police officer. So any of you who are married, love someone who's a police officer, you know they have a little bit of control issues, which I will never repeat that I said that. But we work through those issues. Other than that, we have a really great marriage. We have 2 little ones. Lauren, who is 11. Every single day she goes to school, and I'll just kind of move over, you know, the typical Nike shorts, the t-shirt, her hair is ripped back in the tightest ponytail, and she wears those, you know, Nike Bright shoes that every kid has, and she goes to school with the mission of who am I going to be on the soccer field today? And she has this little athletic body, which I am so thankful for, because she really struggles in school. So I worry about her 24/7. She has this learning disability that school is just a nightmare for her, but thankfully she was given this very athletic body that she works in, and she takes on those boys. My little daughter, my little one Ella, I say is my little pistol. She's a bull in a china cabinet, and I have no clue where she got this big personality. I mean, it is big and she's loud. The teacher called me a couple weeks ago and said, Michelle, and I don't know, why do teachers call at the very end of the school year anyway? Because we could have worked on this in the beginning. And she said, Michelle, her voice, it's up here. We got to take it down to a normal voice. And I said, okay, we'll work on that the last 3 weeks of the school year. We live in Danville, in this gorgeous town, and my resume, yes, makes me want to barf. That's not how I want you to remember me. Tonight I want you to remember me as a girlfriend, a friend who has a life a lot like yours, who's trying to juggle motherhood, a career, being a good friend, being a good aunt. And so that's my life today. Let me share with you where I was a decade ago, which is a pretty ugly place. And it took me a while to write this book because I didn't want to share this place. Why disclose disclose this ugly place that I was at? My stomach literally was in knots all the time. I ended up in the hospital, several stints for weeks at a time. This was over a decade ago, where the doctors would say, don't know what's wrong with you. Sorry, did all the tests, don't know what's wrong with you. I went to my partners and I said, I want to sell my practice. My partners looked at me and said, what? You know, you're one of the top in your field, you're at the top of your game. What do you mean you want to sell? You have more clients than you can even keep up with. What are you talking about? I want to sell my practice. I went to my husband, and for the Catholics, I grew up Catholic. This is utter sacrilegious. I told him I wanted a divorce. It was bad. My relationships were straining at every place possible. And I didn't know what was wrong because I didn't really understand the balance thing yet, but I didn't know what was wrong. Jared didn't know how to help me. My mother and father, the only other people who really knew, didn't know how to help me. How do you help a woman who visually has it all? She has it all. And so I will tell you what was wrong with me. I was trying to live the perfect life. The perfect mom, the perfect wife, the perfect aunt, the perfect friend, the perfect financial advisor, everything. I was trying to be superwoman. And I was consumed. I was absolutely consumed. And I had lived this motto, just to back up, in my 20s and 30s, I had lived by this motto: you work hard and you play hard. Simple, right? You have no one else to worry about when you're in your 20s. And so it was easy. I was in a field where literally there's 1,000 men, and then there's Michelle. So I just worked my butt off until my hands bled. It was that hard. I was pushing myself. And so then my little one comes, I get married, here comes this beautiful baby, and I'm still doing that. 110 miles an hour during the day. Then I came home and gave my husband every last bit, and that baby every last bit, 110 at home. And I'd go into bed, and so many nights I'd give my husband, that kiss where, sorry, the one man in the room. The kiss where he's not getting any sex. And I would say to him, thank goodness you can't die from sex deprivation, or you would be a goner. And he would just, not funny. So to put it in a nutshell, my life had no balance. Absolutely no balance. I thought I could be some kind of superwoman, super wife, super this. And I found out the hard way. So tonight we are going to talk about how I crawled out of this hole. We're going to talk about how you can have balance with romance to finances. Yes, we're going to talk about romance and finance within like 5 minutes. Friendships, family, we're going to talk about these steps because I stumbled on something that was pretty amazing. And that's clearly why this book is an Amazon bestsellers and it's flying off the shelf. Women are loving it because the steps are simple. We just need to put them into place. And what I'm going to say many times tonight is you are going to have to fight for your balance. Balance is not something like an inheritance where it's given to you on the silver platter. You have to fight for it. Our kids, our husbands, our bosses, our partners, they don't intentionally suck the balance out of you. They're not doing that intentionally, right? We've got to fight for it. You have to fight for it. So, if you've gotten used to living your life out of balance, or for many women after they read my book, they said, I didn't even realize how out of balance I was. You might cope with anxiety. You might cope with the fear of failure, trying to live up to someone's expectation, or worse, your own. I've had women email me and say, I have dealt with so much depression over the years, and now I'm crawling my way out of it because I'm fighting for my balance. That's pretty cool. So I've mentioned balance several times, and you're probably thinking, okay, well, what's your definition of balance? And I'm not going to give you the dictionary definition because that's just boring for speeches. But again, I'm going to paint a picture. When I talk about balance, I'm talking about a woman who isn't trying to be superwoman. And I'm going to bring up superwoman because we are going to kick her to the curb by the end of this night. I'm going to bring her up a few times. But it isn't a woman who's pressuring herself to be superwoman. It isn't a woman who can only get through half the day. It's a woman who can get through the full day. A balanced woman is someone who is happy and joyful and sees the beauty in her friendships, in her relationships. And most importantly, ladies, and this is what kills me when I have girlfriends or friends or clients who say this, it is women who are confident with their decisions as a mother, as a friend, as an aunt, as a wife, as an employee. Being confident in who you are in your decision making. So, people have asked me, Michelle, what does balance feel like internally to you? Because it's kind of a funny word, right? What does it feel like? And I use this example in my talks, and women get it right away. So you go get a massage, which you haven't had for 6 months probably, and you get in that nice warm bed, your body starts to relax. The first 10 minutes, the masseuse puts their hand on you, and you start feeling this tension release, right? The first 10 minutes is the best, because that's when you feel all the tension start to release. You realize, how bad did my body need this? It's that euphoric feeling. That is what balance, true balance, should feel like. It should feel euphoric, and you should crave it. That's what I want you to strive for, and that's what I strive for today. Because living a life of not having balance is just, it shouldn't be acceptable in your life. So let's jump in. Okay, step number 1, kicking superwoman to the curb and learning to be a good enough mom, good enough wife, good enough. So when I was a child, I grew up with 3 siblings and 4 cousins, and we always, every weekend, got to go out to my Vava and Vuvu Portuguese ranch. Lived out in Las Banas, beautiful town. And we played superheroes every weekend, because there was no technology back then, right? No technology, what do? You go out on the ranch and you think of things to do. So every weekend, I wanted to be Superwoman. She had those long legs, the teeny tiny waist, and she solved all problems. By Saturday, we had a problem. By Sunday night, life was solved. I always wanted to be Superwoman. And the good news is Superwoman does live on today. And I see some of you walking around on Halloween in her outfit. The bad news is many women went into adulthood thinking, I can be Superwoman. I can be Superwoman. Superwoman is another word for perfectionism, isn't it? The definition is impossible for humans to achieve, yet it's really hailed as the Holy Grail. And in writing this book, I read article after article after article. The media loves to spin the whole Superwoman thing. And they loved it when I wrote this book. I got so many calls from my journalist friends, and they're like, you're killing us. You're killing us with the chapter on the Superwoman. Because media did a great job over the last 40 years of just pushing the Superwoman thing. Women want to be all, do all, conquer all. And what ultimately, though, it leads to, with us trying to be Superwoman, is it leads to guilt, which I hear so often. Oh, I feel guilty, I can't be here. I feel guilty, I can't be here. I feel guilty, I can't be, at some event for my son. It leads to depression, it leads to comparison, and it leads to frustration. So let me say that again. Trying to be Superwoman leads to guilt, self-judgment, depression, comparisons, and frustration. We've been brainwashed. So how many people right now are secretly going, I think I have the Superwoman syndrome? Yeah,
I'll admit it.
Just a few. Okay, well, I'm glad 3 of you agree with me. On the first page of my book, I wrote all the titles that never made the book. And one of them was Superwoman Can Suck It. And it was the title for a long time. And actually, I'm going on TV, CBS tomorrow, and the producer said, you can say suck it on the TV. And I'm like, I don't think I'm going to say that. But my publisher didn't think that would fly, and as a Christian woman, I didn't really think that was appropriate. But that's how I felt, is I wanted her gone. And I'm going to tell you the secret that freed me. Here it is, ladies. This is what freed me from guilt, is learning to be a good enough mom. And you can take the mom out of it. You can learn to be a good enough grandma. You can learn to be a good enough friend. You can learn to be a good enough employee. So does that sound horrible to you? Does it sound like this awful compromise? And are you secretly judging me right now? Because if you are, knock it off. But anyway, let me explain where this was derived. In 1953, a pediatrician named Donald Winnicott came up with this good enough mothering concept. But I want you to take away the mother and you put in whatever you want, because it applies. The good doctor agreed that mothers must fully adapt to infants' needs, since the infant is incapable of doing anything for himself. But as time goes on, he discovers that the mother should adapt less and less. This not only prepares the child for the reality of life, that they cannot get every single thing they need at every single moment, but most importantly, it allows the child to grow, mature, become independent, which is needed for a balanced, successful life. So I'll tell you, when I heard this whole good enough thing, I was deep into therapy, but I heard this good enough concept, I was afraid. I was absolutely terrified, because I wanted to be the perfect mom. I didn't want to be this selfish mom. You know, I was killing myself. And it just sounded like, oh, I'm going to be a lousy mom if I'm just good enough. That perhaps maybe I didn't love my children enough. Good enough just didn't sound good enough, right? But none of us are perfect, ladies, so think about that. None of us are perfect. We're just trying to do the best we can. So being a good enough mother, being a good enough wife, being a good enough friend does not mean that you're any less. It means you are going to fill yourself up first so that you can give everybody else around you more. So does that make sense, this whole good enough concept? My aha moment really came when I realized, you know what? Guilt and self-judgment was not going to save me. But we all continue to feel it. I mean, women, we really love that guilt thing. And as a Catholic, I mean, the Catholics in the room, I grew up, boy, that guilt thing's good. And in short, we have to stop being superwoman. And I know some of you have her long legs, you have her little ways, some of you might even wear the cape in the bedroom. We don't need to discuss that tonight. But we got to stop being her. We don't have the superpowers, we're just trying to be as good as we can. So that's number one. Number two, we are going to eliminate toxic friends from our life. This was a really touchy subject in my book. Also got quite a bit of media attention because women, it's hard for us to get rid of toxic people. Toxic friends are like nuclear waste. That's my analogy in the book, and it's so true. Psychologist Clinton McLemore says, quote, "A toxic relationship is someone who continually throws you curves, keeps you off balance, raises your anxiety," ugh, sounds horrible, "and leaves you feeling badly over and over again," end quote. So does anyone have friends or relatives that make you feel like that? You don't have to raise your hand, because it might be your friend. And that's the thing. We all have those toxic friends. The ones that disparage your choices, the ones who say, I'm only trying to be helpful, I'm only trying to be honest. The ones who leave you feeling down over and over again. And I'm a girl's girl. I love the group of girlfriends I have now. I have the best group of girlfriends, and it really has no toxic friends in it, but it was not always like that. It wasn't always like that. So what do we do with these friends? Ladies, we have to speak up and communicate to these friends if they are toxic. If you want to save that relationship, you need to communicate, these things are just not working for me, X, Y, Z. If you do not want to save the relationship, then you end the relationship or create boundaries so that friend is not actively in your life. I had to do this with one of my dearest, dearest friends. It was horrible. I'm not going to say the talk was easy. She even tried to tear me down during the conversation. And I even mourned the loss of her for months afterwards. But once you clean out the stable of toxic people in your life, you will start taking on this peace and balance you didn't even realize was possible. This consists of women that support you, that are non-judgmental, that love you, that love your children. They don't love your husband, they love your children. Because remember, self-actualized women will naturally be proud of you. They'll be proud of your accomplishments. They'll cry with you when times are tough. But they're not allowed, toxic people, hurt you over and over and over again. It's not allowed. It will throw off your balance quicker than you know what hit you. Step number 3, creating team with family and friends. So as I mentioned, I grew up in Las Vegas, country girl, believe it or not. Old Portuguese family. My mom was a stay-at-home mom who handled our home with grace and ease. And but we were not immune from chores. So on Saturday, my sisters and I would take our record player, remember record players, and we would crank Olivia Newton-John. Remember Xanadu, and you're the one that I want? And if I was going to clean toilets, it was going to be to Xanadu. So we cranked that every Saturday. And as soon as we were done, we headed out to my Baba and Boo-Boo's ranch. And I witnessed, it's interesting thinking back, it's like the Italian family. All the poor cheese would pile in my grandma's house. All the women would be in there cooking, and the men would be outside. So that's what I witnessed. Who witnessed traditional roles like that? Women inside, men outside. Yeah. That's what I witnessed every single weekend, every single day. So you fast forward to today. You fast forward to, 10 years ago, when I was in the stark cold. And I took these traditional roles into my marriage. So I was doing all the household work, the grocery shopping, the cooking, the laundry. Remember, I'm the partner of a financial planning firm. And then I just had a baby, so I'm fully taking care of her. And my husband, God bless him, he's the sweetest guy. But if you're not going to tell a guy to help you, they're not going to do it. Right, ladies? Yes. They will let you kill yourself, and that's where I say, fight for that balance. Because it wasn't intentional. But hey, if you're going to go do the grocery shopping and this and that, then go for it. So I was literally exhausted. I was at the breaking point of my marriage. Not really knowing what was going on, but I was at the breaking point. So thankfully, my husband was like, I'll go to counseling. Okay. So we went. And I love therapy because, you go the first meeting, you babble, babble, babble. They say nothing. Next meeting, you babble, babble. They say nothing. So I'm thinking third meeting, she's going to tear into it, right? She's going to tear into it. Third meeting, I babble, babble. The lady turns her chair to me, right on. And I thought, oh, no. Because that's not good. I'm about to get it. And she looks at me head on and she says, why aren't you asking your husband for help? And, of course, because everything in my brain thinks money, I'm thinking, this lady just robbed me. I cannot believe I paid for her to tell me to ask my husband for help. And seriously, I was thinking, how is this going to help my marriage? How is this going to help my sex life? I was livid. I'm starting to get hot. And Jared didn't move. He wasn't moving. And so I didn't respond because I didn't want her to think I was crazy. You don't want your therapist to think you're the crazy one the whole time she'll be saying. So I shut my mouth, and the great experiment of our marriage began, which was Jared started doing the grocery shopping and cooking on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. That's it. Okay? And right now you're thinking, that sounds heaven. But remember, I came from these traditional roles that then we bring into our marriage, and you want to be doing those feminine things because that's what women do, but we're exhausted. And so I literally Jared had to go and lock me in my bedroom for the first few months of getting into this routine because I wanted to get in there and change what he was cooking, and it was a disaster in the kitchen. And I literally was sweating, and he would say, go in the bedroom and shut the door. And so after a while, the therapist clearly had a mission. Her mission was for me to feel what it was like to be cared for, but in a non-traditional way. And the joke was on me because clearly it did turn into heaven in our house. Me asking for help and dividing our household duties literally saved my marriage, saved literally my sex life. It was amazing. And so I understand, I'm not, clueless to the fact that every relationship in this room is completely different. But one thing I do know for sure, most of us are not living in 1950 anymore. Our relationships do not look and feel like that. And so we as women need to drop these silly conditionings and learn to ask for help. Learn to ask for help. There was a study that came out in 2011. I look at all these number stuff. 2011, Forbes published Why Stay-at-Home Moms, because just because you're a stay-at-home mom doesn't mean you're exempt from this. Why they should earn $115,000 a year salary. A typical stay-at-home mom works almost 97 hours a week, 13, as a daycare teacher, 3.9 as a household CEO, 7.6 psychologist, 14 as a chef, 22 laundry. It makes you tired just thinking of it. We need to ask our husbands, our kids for help. Now, here's the kicker to this. Two things, You gotta listen, ladies. And this one's for my neighbor. I can feel her standing. Is we've got to be very specific, because we know men, right? You've got to be very specific. Fold the laundry while you're watching the game. Okay. Fold the laundry. Very specific. You can't just say, oh I'm so tired. I'm so tired. You can't just whine like that, which we're great at. I was great at just whine. And number 2 is once you've laid the groundwork, you can't micromanage them. We are great at this, ladies. If you hand him that laundry and you tell him to fold it, and it looks like a bus ran over it, who cares? You didn't have to fold the laundry. And I still need to remind myself of this. I came home about a month and a half ago and Jared was making sloppy joes. Literally, it makes me just want to vomit thinking about it. Because when I was 10, my mother made sloppy joes for dinner. Back then, I hated them. My dad pulled it out for breakfast because I didn't eat it. Because he was going to prove a point. You were going to learn to eat your dinner. And so I get home. The music's on, the kids are doing their homework, Jared's making sloppy joes, he's happy, it's Tuesday, he's cooking, and I walk in and I just go into town. Why are you making sloppy joes? Those are horrible. Oh my gosh, that's horrible. Oh, they taste like, do you know what's in sloppy joes? And he, brilliant, doesn't say a word, silence. Because he knows, she'll talk her way out of this. And then I had to just, about a minute into my rant and rave, I zipped it and I said, Michelle, what are you doing? The kids are happy, music's going, eat something else, who cares, right? So who cares how the laundry's folded? Who cares? You're not doing it. And that is how you've got to fight for your balance and release that control, release it. Don't be afraid to ask for help. It's not this dirty word. It's really become a dirty word to us. Help is a dirty word. And I don't know where that went so haywire. So let's see where we are at so far. We're going to kick superwoman to the curb and learn to be good enough. We're going to get rid of toxic friends or toxic acquaintances, we'll call them. And we are going to ask for help if we need it. If you don't need it, hey, you don't ask, but I need it. So that's where we're at so far. Step number 4, and I'm going to sound like a flight attendant, but when going through life with children or husbands, you need to put your oxygen mask on first. So as I mentioned, I grew up in this beautiful town called Los Banos, and I keep saying beautiful because anybody's been there. Oh, we're taping this. Beautiful town. I loved it. I mean, back in the day, it was beautiful. And so we'd have to find things to do in the country. I mean, I lived in the country. And so one of the things that we had this canal next to my house. And I would jog my pig down the canal bank. Pig. I said pig, not dog. Pig. I showed for 4-H, the local 4-H, if you know what that is, and I loved showing pigs. Loved it. And so every day I'd come home, and I'd have to go out to the barn, which was maybe like a block in City Street, maybe a block. I'd go out to our barn. My pig would get so excited to see me. I'd lay out fresh straw, and I'd lay down with my pig for like 15, 20 minutes, and then I'd say, let's go. And my favorite pig was named Wilbur. Very original. And I'd say, let's go for our run. And off we'd go. And we'd run down the canal bank. And I always, just for the record, I always had the strongest pig at the fair. I always had. But what my sisters weren't going to do this. My dad was not going to do it. I had to do it. It was my responsibility, and it was my quiet time. I had no idea that spending time with my pig Wilbur would translate to my first bit of addiction, if you want to call it, to balance. It was my first taste of what balance and tranquility felt like. Because that was my Wilbur time. That was my time. And There were days when I went off to college, that I just longed for what I'll call my Wilbur time, my me time. Today, there's still days. My balance isn't 100% all the time. I am fighting for it all the time. For the people in my circle who know me, they know I fight for my balance. And the Wilbur time, you really, and let's call it our me time, is when you feel like you are suffocating and you have to have your me time, you fight for your me time. And for some women, they say, oh, I can't, the kids need me. It's not important. It seems selfish. No, it's not. 15 minutes a day for you to go do whatever fills your soul. Today I go and grab my lab and go for a walk. I'll shut the door and I tell the kids, Mommy needs some me time, and I'll read my Bible. Or I'll call my neighbor, Brenda, or my other neighbor and say, let's have a drink in the backyard. You don't have to justify, ladies. This is the other thing I'm finding with these great emails I'm getting. Women felt like they have to justify 15 minutes a day for your me time. You don't have to justify it. You need to fill yourself up first so you can give everybody else more. So I really want you to take it from a self-centered kind of thinking, from this negative to a positive, where you're getting centered with yourself. And you go find your Wilbur time. It might be knitting, it might be hanging out with grandkids, it might be going for a walk, whatever it is. You don't need to justify. Just tell everybody, I need some Wilbur time. Sorry, bye. Okay, step number 5, keeping the romance alive. This was quite the juicy chapter, and I want everybody for just 30 seconds, not even 15 seconds, shut your eyes. We're going to do a little drill here. So I want you to think back, ladies, to life before children, before soccer, before homework, before diapers, before the crazy job you might have, when romance and sex was spontaneous and worry-free. I know this might be a while for some of us. Oh, wow, you're really smiling, some of you. Okay, open your eyes. Lots of you really got the smiles going. So for me, juggling work, household duties, and this new baby, it was like translating 5 languages at once. It was crazy town, I called it. And Jared, even though I adored him and loved him, he was the quickest and easiest thing to throw on the back burner. Our romance and our sex life was the quickest thing to throw on the back burner, because you clearly couldn't throw the baby on the back burner, and I couldn't throw my career on the back burner, so Jared got thrown on the back burner. And that wasn't fair to him, and it wasn't fair to our relationship. So in my book, I actually did a Q&A with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Nanette Rowe, who's a clinical psychologist, and she's friends with our little group here, and we did countless hours of interviews. And her message was so profound, I had planned to just take some quotes from her in the book. But Nanette, Dr. Rowe, was so profound in her message that I went to my publisher and I said, I want to quote her. I want to do this Q&A because I want women to see exactly what she's saying, because I can't even do it justice. And so we ended up doing that. And one of the questions, this is just one of many, which I'll let you read it in the privacy of your home, and then when you're done, you throw that book at your husband and you say, read this chapter. Read it. But one of the questions, why do couples, you're the only guy here, I have to give you a hard time. Oh, 2. Well, yeah, well, that's right. Okay, you read the book too. Why do couples lose the romantic spark in their relationship? And I thought, oh, simple question. I'll just throw it out. I kind of was out of questions. But this one was so profound, her answer. Quote, this is what she says. This happens in the best of marriages. A simple example of this is when the person you're sleeping with, who used to be your romantic ideal, suddenly becomes the guy who wakes up with bad breath, food in his teeth, leaving his underwear on the floor. Does this sound familiar?